This is Hannibal here from the Hannibal TV on YouTube with a review of the original Smashing Machine documentary. Somebody posted a pirated copy of it on YouTube a day or two ago. So if you haven't seen it yet, because it used to be up there years and years and years ago, but then when The Rock bought the rights to it, they had it taken down everywhere. And now, just a day before the movie is set to be released in theater, The Rock's version of the movie, the original version, the documentary version, is on YouTube. I did see The Rock on, I think it was not Jimmy Kimmel. He was on a talk show, Jimmy Fallon. The Rock was on Jimmy Fallon a day or two ago, and he brought Mark Kerr with him. So keep in mind, I've done I think 2 or 3 interviews with Mark Kerr now. I've known him for a few years. I have heard through numerous sources he's got a bit of an ego back now. Um, but whatever. He's getting a second chance at fame, but nice guy in my dealings with him. As far as seeing him on Jimmy Fallon, I mean, when I first met him, I believe he was working at like a car dealership. Like he knew The Rock was doing a movie on him. At that point, it was only going to be a Netflix movie. But how amazing is it to have been famous in the late 90s, early 2000s, then to lose all your fame, be working at like a car dealership, then suddenly The Rock sees your documentary or something like that. I don't know how The Rock actually discovered him. I will assume it's from the documentary. Buys the rights to the documentary and then does a movie that's basically going to put you back on the map to the point where you're actually put in the UFC Hall of Fame by The Rock. And it is interesting they're really trying to push that the fight scenes in this movie were very realistic. The Rock is claiming that he let one of the fighters wail on him a bit in one of the scenes. So we'll see when we see the actual Hollywood version of the movie what happens with that. But let's talk a bit about the original documentary. Obviously, this was the day, and it's interesting. I was just gonna say this was the days where there was no testing on Jimmy Fallon. The Rock, who's still huge. Anyone that says that he's small now, he still has one of the best physiques in the world, if not the best. But he mentions on Jimmy Fallon that he had to put on 30 or 40 pounds to play Mark Kerr. And there's no follow-up questions. Well, you were already jacked. How did you gain another 30 or 40 pounds? I mean, everybody knows the answer, so I guess you don't really have to say it. But he packed on. He even more size than ever. It's interesting. In his 50s, The Rock is far better shape than he was in his 20s. I remember. I think he had there was some access, and I think he's admitted to this. He had some like they call it gynomastia on his nipples when he first debuted in WWE, which is like little breast lumps underneath your nipples. He had that in his 20s. He had it removed, but he wasn't as tight or as hard. I mean, he still looked good, but like it's funny. He's better shape than ever now, and probably in the best overall shape in this Smashing Machine movie. But what you notice most about the actual documentary movie that's on YouTube, at least for now, could be off by the time I finish doing this review, is just the size of Mark Kerr. You notice that he has very good takedown skills in wrestling. They talk about there was more money fighting in Japan back then than there was in the UFC, and I know at least for some of his Japanese fights, Rick Bassman, who I'm very familiar with, was actually representing him. He all Rick Bassman also represented Mark Coleman in a lot of his fights, including the fixed fight that Mark Coleman had in Pride, which was known to have numerous fixed fights because obviously there was gambling involved and so forth. But as bad as I always heard this documentary was, I'd never seen it until now. It doesn't go really over the top about showing his opioid addiction. I mean, it shows him in Japan asking for opioids. It shows himself shooting up with something, shows him drinking. It's he had an overdose during the time that he was filming this, and it shows him in the hospital and going to rehab. It talks about the girlfriend who was a drinker and a partier, and how she was a negative force in his life and like would bring drama to the backstage area when he's trying to focus on fights. And I couldn't even imagine dealing with somebody as somebody that likes to have beers and so forth. I mean, if I was training for a fight and I had my girlfriend drinking in the house when I'm trying to train for a fight and stay in shape, I can understand how tough that must have been for him, because you do not want to have those type of temptations around you when you're training for fights. And there's no doubt the negative influence of the girlfriend probably affected his performance in some of the fights. You see Mark Coleman in this in the top of his career. When I interviewed Mark Coleman a month or two ago, he claimed that he was getting no money for the Rock's movie, even though he was a consultant on it. He said he was getting no money at all. So if that's true, we'll see. He also claimed Mark Kerr was getting no money on it, but I don't see how that's possible. Tank Abbott lives in a very fancy area of Scottsdale, and apparently Mark Kerr has moved into that area now. So obviously he's getting some money. The interesting thing will be, you see The Rock and Mark Kerr on the cover of Sports Illustrated now. Is Mark Kerr going to get famous and get acting jobs and more out of this? Or is this just going to be Mark Kerr is going to get a boost of publicity and then fade away again? No matter what, his legacy now is going to be documented in the best way possible by The Rock, and they're saying this is The Rock's best dramatic role ever. I am going to go see the Hollywood version of the movie tomorrow, and I'll do a review of that. But as far as the documentary, well, it was interesting to see. Boss Rutan is in it too, a guy I've interviewed for a while. He was also in it. Hard work with no expectation of being paid is honorable. They made pretty good money in Pride. And they do talk about it this, and Mark Kurz talked about this with me. He was not a street fighter, and his first real fight, like it's not like he was fighting in high school and stuff. Obviously, he was wrestling, but his first real fight was in a cage. So he was good at it. He would do anything to win, but he had a lot of anxiety over it, and he didn't like to do it. He did it for the money.